I'm gonna go ahead and get started. Is everybody seeing the graphic on my screen? Am I sharing this correctly?
Yes.
I'm
Okay.
seeing the ILL refresher screen.
Okay, great. I have a couple slides that I just have there kind of as a placeholder, but I am going to actually go to World Share and do some searching and show you some things on there. I think seeing it live kind of helps a little bit. So let's get started. Let's see. Okay, a couple things I'll go over that questions that were brought up about just general policies. Will we request for items that are owned locally? Yes, for some things. If your patron wants the large print and we only own regular, we certainly can request it. If it's just something that's checked out and the patron doesn't want to wait, we're generally not going to do that. If it's missing, it's long overdue. Yes, definitely, we will try for it. If it's, like I said, different formats, we'll go for. If you need multiple copies for book clubs, we'll go for that even when it's owned locally. Another question that was brought up was what constitutes an item being too new? We go with 4 months for books. That doesn't mean that a book that's 4 months old we're going to be able to get, because every library has their own policies. Some of them won't loan items till they're a year old. Some won't. Some are 6 months. Some are 4 months. Some will loan something brand new if it's on the shelf. That tends to be academic libraries, though, and that's not the bulk of what we're requesting. So for books, you should wait until it's 4 months old. We generally go with the publication date from Amazon. For audiovisual, we go with a year. We've found that even if we try to request things that are newer, if it's a movie, if it's a popular CD, music CD, in all likelihood, we can send it through to 30 different people and they're going to say no because it's popular on there. Just like you guys know, when you get new DVDs in, the list of holds on it can be quite long. The exception to that is we will try for like nonfiction. I will sometimes try for nonfiction DVDs a little sooner than that because they aren't quite as popular. And then one of the other policy questions that came up was about out of state. By default, we will try out of state, but only after we've exhausted all the in-state possibilities. And when I say in-state, that also includes Minitex, which is a huge portion of Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota. The reason we don't count them as out of state is because they're part of our shared delivery system. So it's no additional fees or charges for you to pay for shipping for us to go to those locations. It may take a little bit longer than something coming from within Wisconsin, but we're going to try that. Now, for some libraries, I know the way your budgets are, you don't really have the funds to pay for shipping. So that is a decision that's up to you. If you do not want me to try out of state, you should put something in the notes field. You can just do OS no, and I'll know what that means. You don't have to necessarily write it all out, whatever works for you. But just know that unless you specifically say that you don't want us to try out of state, if we've exhausted all in-state possibilities, we will do that. Okay. So what I'm going to do, and hopefully I can figure out how to do this right, I'm going to go and I'm actually going to go and do a search, go through the creating of a request. But a couple things before I get there. I was asked about whether do I need to check WorldCat and WizCat, and Fond du Lac's catalog. No, you do not need to try all of those. That's up to you. There's the checkbox, so I know whether or not you tried Fond du Lac's catalog, because it doesn't, it's going to save me the time, and I'm going to get through the requests and get them processed quicker if I know that you already checked Fond du Lac and I don't need to duplicate that. Whether you use WorldCat.org or WizCat for looking things up, verifying, and creating is up to you, whatever you're more comfortable with. I'm even fine if you're verifying something in Amazon. I just need to have all of the information. Author, title, publication information can be helpful, but definitely either the OCLC number or an ISBN. Sometimes if your patron's looking for something very specific, the ISBN can sometimes be a better option. But either of those will work, and that's just going to make sure that I'm getting the item that you actually need in the format that you actually need. So I am going to, for a second, stop sharing so I can see if. Okay, are you seeing the WorldCat.org
Yes.
screen now?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. I'm just going to do it real quick because I should probably start from here. So you guys should all be familiar with this screen. This really has, all the information you're going to need for most of the things you're going to do. One thing I'll mention is if you log in to the extranet, when you go to create a request, it's going to automatically fill in your email address. Not a big thing, but it saves you a little bit of time. And you know that it's typed in incorrectly, because a lot of the times what I see happen, if somebody says, I got this book in, I'm not finding a request for it, 9 times out of 10, it's that somehow the email address got typed in wrong, so you never got that copy of the email. So if you're logging in, it's gonna fill in your email address for you, and you'll know that it's the correct email address. So I will go to worldcat.org from there. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about searching in here and things that might help you to find things a little bit quicker. First off, the main search is a keyword anywhere. So I'm going to do a search. I'm looking for a book called Lost and Found. Helps if I type it right. So typing that in, I'm going to get, you'll see I got like over 300,000 results, which isn't super useful. So I can go in and I can, because it is a keyword, I can add the author's last name, which does narrow it down to 741. But there's still some things that don't look right. One of the other things you can do is if you put the title, if you know that the title is correct, if you're not 100% sure on the title, don't do this, but you can put the title in quotes, which is going to narrow it down even further, which oddly gives me different results than I got the other day that don't look correct. So that is not always the best option, I guess. Oh, because I spelled the author's last name wrong. Helps if I spell it right. So, okay. So this is actually what I'm looking for, Lost and Found by Andrew Clements. And you'll see that it's giving me different formats, the ebook, the audiobook, Braille, the print book's further down, but this is obviously in a foreign language. The way that the results show up in this version of WorldCat is by the bib record that was most recently added or edited. So a lot of times it's not the US bib record, it's not the bib record with the most holdings. I'm not quite sure why they do it that way, but it is what they do. So if you're looking for something in particular, a good way to do it is over on the side, you have, you can limit by format. So I want the audiobook on CD. So if I click in front of audiobooks on CD, I get this. You will see it's giving me the MP3 CD, which is not always a format everybody can use. You have to have a CD player that reads MP3 CDs. So once I'm on this bib record, if I look at view all editions and formats, it still knows that I want audiobooks, but it's going to show me all the different versions of it. I can see there's the playaway as the first one. That's not what I want. Then I've got the MP3 CD. I've got e-audiobooks. Some of these, another playaway. You know, this one a little bit further down. If I scroll down, this is one CD, maybe not what I want. It's not that, it's not that important to me if you get the right one. The one thing is, if it's an MP3 CD and you know your patron can't use that, make sure to let me know. So that I'm going for the one that is, you know, the 3, which is what this one is. It's 3 audio discs, so that's a normal audio disc. And that way I can make sure I get a format that your patron can use. Now, as we're on this bib record, which looks like what we want, you're going to see that it's showing 246. There's 246 holdings for 19 editions. So even though I'm on this particular bib record, it's not showing me just the holdings for just this one. It's still showing me the holdings for all the audiobooks. In most cases for you, it's not going to matter. You can still choose this bib record, send it through to me. It's going to have the information I need. I know that you want the audiobook. I know that you want the unabridged, because all of that coordinates with this particular record. But if you want to see the holdings just for this exact one, if you click on just this edition, it's going to go, the number of holdings is going to go down, and it is just for this particular edition. So you can see that this is actually owned at a couple in-state locations. However, I will mention that not every library is in worldcat.org. Even libraries that use WorldCat for cataloging, like us, our holdings do not show up in worldcat.org. It's a separate subscription that you're having to pay for that gets your holdings into this. So just because you don't see a Wisconsin location or a Minitex location doesn't mean that we can't still potentially get you the item that from within delivery. So even if you only want us to try delivery locations, it's still worth sending the request through to me, because I'm going to be able to see a lot more locations that potentially have it. It still may come back unfilled. There really might not be anybody in Minitex or Wisconsin, but I wouldn't just trust this and tell the patron no based on this if you don't see the holdings there. Let's see. Okay. Another thing that I'll mention that is that you can search in that field by an ISBN. So if a patron brings you in, they printed off something from Amazon or whatever it is, you can search by the ISBN and it'll take you, you know, right to what you're looking for in a much quicker fashion. So if you already have that ISBN, or if you already have an OCLC number because somebody else looked it up, you can search all of those things in here and have it take you to the bib record so that you're able to get here to get the information you need to fill out the request. And so for that, for filling out the request, you want to start with the title, and you basically want to go down through the edition format, highlight that, I do Control C to copy, or you can, right click and copy. And that's the information that you want to put into the ILL form. Then there's two options for finding the OCLC number. You can click on Permalink, which is right above and on the right. If you click on that, that's going to give you a link to that bib record, and the very end of that is the OCLC number. So you can either click there, or if you scroll down past the library holdings, you'll see all the bibliographic information. It's going to give you the ISBN, both versions, as well as the OCLC number. So you can get that information in either place. ISBN or OCLC number, either one works for me. It's just going to help me ensure that I'm getting you the right format, the right version, exactly what your patron wants. So I will copy this one and then put that in the verification field. I don't have time to look all over, so I'm not going to check Fond du Lac's catalog. So I'm just going to click no. And that's perfectly fine. I have no problem with that. It helps me to know, like I said, saves time. And then I'm going to put the format. I will say we have book on cassette in here, and I have gotten requests recently from a few people for book on cassette. Even though holdings show up, I'm finding more and more that most of the people that have holdings just never deleted them. I will try and see, because I have found there are a few people, but a lot of the holdings that show up for book on cassette just don't actually own them anymore. They've withdrawn them and just not done that. So I'm going to put book on CD, but I know that my patron could probably use that MP3 one if nothing else is available. So I'd put a note in there. The need before date is really something most of the time you're going to leave blank. That's more if you have somebody that's doing a project that's time sensitive and they have to have it by a certain date that you want to put in. But once that date hits, if the request isn't filled, it's done. It's not a guarantee it'll come by that date, though, because we'll keep trying and working on processing it up until that date. And that's the date I put on the request for the lender. So they may ship it the day before that date. But just keep in mind, in most cases, you don't need to worry about it. Now, I did skip information at the top. I'm gonna pretend to be live Berlin because it's at the top. For request number, I've had questions about this as well. Your library has a 2-letter code, so you always want to put that. That helps me if for some reason you choose the wrong library in the dropdown, if the email address isn't right. It also allows me to organize and find requests more quickly. So you want to use your 2-letter code, no spaces, no dashes, and whatever number you're on. You start with 1 at the beginning of the year, work your way up. The reason I want everybody to do it the same is when you ask me about a request, I can search my email and find that request, or I can search within the WorldShare ILL, which I use to send the requests, and find the information. And it's a lot quicker if everybody's is in the same format. Otherwise, I'm like, is it BE12? Is it BE space 12? Is it BE-12? So it can take me a lot more time to find your request if everybody is doing it a little bit different. The patron information, that's entirely for you. So you can leave that blank. It's more there because I know a lot of you input the request and you get that confirmation email, and that's what you're using as your ILL paperwork. That's what you're using when the item comes in to know who it's for. So whatever information is helpful to you, you can put in there. It doesn't make a difference to me. The only time I really look at that is if I would get 2 requests from you in a row for the same title. I would look at that to say, oh, did they have 2 patrons that maybe both came in and said, oh, I'd like to read this book. So you're requesting 2 different copies. If I see it's 2 different patrons, I know that it's 2 different people. I'll go ahead and I'll process them right away. If there's no name there, or if it's the same name, I'm going to get back to you and go, did you mean to send me 2 requests, or did you get interrupted and not realize you already had sent it? So that's basically the form. Submit it, and you'll get the confirmation screen. I can go back to the form and do another one, and you'll see because I'm logged in, my email address is still there. Does anybody have any questions specifically about searching in WorldShare, creating requests? Okay.
I have a question, Michelle.
Yes.
This is Chris from Berlin. You said that not all libraries are in WorldCat. So if we're not finding that, I'm hearing an echo. Can everybody hear the echo? Maybe if everyone can mute themselves, I'm thinking maybe that's it. Sorry. Anyway, you said that not all libraries are in WorldCat. So if we're not finding it in there, should we send the request through anyway?
You can, yes. So as I said, our holdings don't show up in worldcat.org. This is a public facing version of it. There's a staff version that is used for cataloging, that is used for creating and sending ILL requests, which has anybody that uses WorldShare, all of their holdings are in there. So yeah, there's a lot more holdings in there. I had gotten a request yesterday. Somebody had contacted me asking about, this is only owned out of the country. And that was all that showed up in worldcat.org. Well, when I got the request and I searched, there was a US owning location. They just don't pay the extra fees that are involved in having your holdings in that front facing free version. So it's always worth sending the request through. It may be that all the libraries that own it show up here. So you may still not get it, but it's definitely worth trying. Like I said yesterday, I had one that looked like it was only owned out of country, and I did find one location in the US that had it, and they're a lender, so I'm hoping we actually get that item. I will just show you. This is WizCat. So their main search is title. They do have an advanced search, which if you choose to use that, I would suggest that. WizCat does have it set up so that you'll see down at the bottom here that minute text catalogs are searched. So you can search in there. So I will do. Oops. See if I spell the author's last name right this time. So with the thing with WizCat is very few of the holdings are actually in WizCat. What it's doing is it's going out and searching all those libraries' catalogs and then bringing results back. So you'll see that up here it's showing searching the numbers going down because it's searching all of these different individual catalogs. So each system in the state, it's searching their catalogs. It's searching the universities. Okay, so now it's add to results. Now it's finally finished its search of everything. But you can see down on the bottom here, these are all the library catalogs that it is searching to bring back those results. That was. So it's a lot of catalogs. So you're gonna see, I wanted the audiobook on CD. When I click on this, it takes on, but it's gonna show me all these, even though these all, a lot of these look like AudioWorks, Simon & Schuster, look like they're the same thing. Because it's pulling from all these different catalogs, you're gonna get multiple bib records that are the same. Each one of these is basically the results that came back from one particular catalog. So this is what, the results were from Milwaukee County, which you'll notice we did not see Milwaukee County when we searched WorldShare because their holdings aren't in the public facing catalog. One of the things I find with this is it is a bit slower because it is having to search these multiple catalogs. So here's more, which is the IFLS catalog, and it shows their holdings. So either one is perfectly fine. Whatever works well for you. With WorldShare, it groups everything together so you can find one bib record and get the information you need and send it in. This one, like I said, it's coming up with a lot of different bib records because it is searching all those different catalogs. I need the same information. You're going to need the title, author, publication information, which is it might be easier to copy and paste from here, but I still do want something like the ISBN. If the system number says OCLC in front of it, it's an OCLC number, that's acceptable. Some of them will say Sky in front of it, which is for Sky Blue, which is a different cataloging software, which we don't use and don't have access to. And so that number's not going to mean anything to me. So if you do it from in here, you definitely want the ISBN, publication information. So I would say, that bit of information has the ISBN, author, title. I can see it's unabridged 3 audio discs. So searching in here is perfectly fine. This, I believe, has I don't think there's anything in Wisconsin it doesn't have, other than maybe a few of the universities may not be in here. There are some libraries that don't have their holdings in OCLC that are in here. I do check both. I always go to OCLC first. I'm going to try the locations that are in OCLC. If I don't find anything, I will double check in here for any other Wisconsin holdings before I refer it out of state. And again, out of state doesn't include Minitex. So it might go to Minitex before it went to somebody that wasn't in OCLC but does have their holdings in WSCAT. The only libraries that we don't access that are in WSCAT are like public schools. Most of them actually do have their holdings within the WSCAT catalog, not it isn't pulling out from their own catalog, and this is what they use for cataloging, which is why their holdings are there. But they generally aren't on delivery, and especially now, don't have staff to do any lending. So does anybody else have any questions about searching, creating requests? Otherwise, I will go see if I can. All right. Okay. So now that we've requested the item and you get it, so I want to talk a little bit about due dates. So a couple years ago, the ALA National ILL guidelines changed to make it that the due date that is on the item when you receive it is actually to be considered the date that it's due back at your library. So technically, the due date that's on that paperwork, you could give that due date to your patron because it's the date it's due back at your library. That's all great in theory, but most everybody has automated systems that send out overdues. and take care of that kind of stuff. So what happens is if you make that due date, the due date for your patron, and it gets back to your library, it's going to end up overdue in their system, which, you know, causes a lot more work for everybody, sending overdues and replying to overdues. So I think in practical terms, we still should treat it the way we always have, which is that's the date it's due back to them. So make it due about a week or so before for your patron. A caveat to that is the guidelines also say that your patron should always have at least 1 week to use an item. So if you get an item and it's due in 3 days, even if we request a renewal and they deny it, you can give it to your patron for 7 days. So I always say the best thing to do is, you know, contact your patron right away. Tell them you're going to have it for at least 7 days. We're going to try to get it for you longer, but we might not be able to. That way they can come and pick it up, get it. We'll request the renewal. If they say yes, you can, you know, renew it for the patron, give them that extra time. If they say no, at least the patron had that 7 days. If we wait until we get a reply, that, you know, that 7 days might be gone, and then the patron isn't going to get it at all, and we'll have to try to get it again from someplace else. Now, on the opposite end, there are a number of libraries, particularly universities, who give extremely long due dates. Some that they check items out for 4 months, 5 months. A lot of universities do that because they figure students want them. They're going to want it for a semester. We're going to save ourselves time rather than continually doing renewals. We're just going to check it out for that long amount of time with no renewals on it. Pardon me. I advise against just giving it to your patron for that amount of time right off the bat. I think your best course of action is to give what our normal loan period would be. So give them a month for a book. If it turns out that's not enough, you can automatically give them a renewal because you know you have it for longer. A lot of times if patrons have that much time, they kind of said, oh, I've got plenty of time. They'll set it aside. They'll forget about it. Then all of a sudden it comes due and they're like, oh, I didn't finish it yet. Can I get more time? Well, that's one of those that is an automatic no for renewal. And it also, you know, patrons can sometimes think, oh, well, I can get longer if I get this through ILL. I found that especially with DVDs. There was a patron who was just, they only wanted full seasons of DVDs. They didn't want when they were broken up, which a lot of them in our system are. So they were wanting me to request them. And I think that ended up being because for ILL, libraries check things out longer to give time for travel, to give time for everything else. So they were getting longer if they got on ILL a full season than they would if they checked out the individual parts within our system. And that's a case where generally we're not gonna go outside of the system for that because we do own it. Yes, having them individual is not always as convenient, but that's why our loan period for those is a week, because you can check them out one at a time. And along with due dates, one of the things I should mention is when you're checking items out to patrons, the ILL cards that you use are set to check out for that day only. So they will check out till midnight on the day you check them out, unless you use the special due date helper and change the due date to whatever due date you're assigning the item. And the reason for that is because we don't know what due dates other libraries are going to give us. Sometimes, like I said, sometimes you could get several months. Sometimes you're going to have 2 weeks for the patron to use it. So it's important to remember that, because, and the other reason to remember that is because those ILL cards have a $1 per day fine. And even if you're fine exempt, that doesn't count for those. those do still give fines for fine exempt libraries. The reason being is we're not trying to punish people with that. The idea is that we want people to return things. If we continually have things that are late going back to libraries, they aren't getting things back on time, they may decide not to loan to us. I've had that happen in the past. And the problem with it is that it's not just your library, it's all of our libraries that could get cut off from borrowing from them. So it's in our best interest to keep a good relationship, to get those items back to the libraries on time as often as possible. So really that fine is just there to let people know, like, hey, this is something different and we need to treat it differently. We need to make sure that it gets back on time. That isn't to say that you can't waive those fines. I have no control over that. But we do want to just encourage the patrons to make sure they're returning them on time. So along with due dates kind of goes renewals. So I will mention that. When to request a renewal. I know there are times that you get an item in and you know that the amount of time you have isn't necessarily enough to use the patron. The patron would only have 2 weeks and you know they're a little bit slower reader. I still recommend waiting till closer to the due date to request a renewal, because what I've found is most libraries renew from the day their renewal is requested. So if their standard checkout period is 4 weeks and they'll renew for 4 weeks and you get the book and it took 2 weeks to get to you, so it has 2 weeks left. If they renew it that day, they renew it from 4 weeks from that day, which basically adds 2 weeks to the end of your loan period, instead of if you wait until right before the due date, you know, it's adding 4 weeks from that time. So the closer, you know, if we wait till closer to the due date, within, I mean, usually a few days before, most likely to request it before the due date, you're going to get more time for your patron. I can request the renewal at any point. If you do want me to request it sooner, I recommend that you ask for a specific due date, because sometimes when libraries see that and they go, okay, well, they just got this and, you know, it's a 4-week checkout and it's due in 3 weeks from now, why are they renewing it already? If I put in a specific due date and they see that, they can kind of look at it and go, okay, I see they need it till this time. And when they renew it, maybe then it'll actually give them that full amount of extra time, not just a couple weeks. To request a renewal, you just need to send me an email. The easiest thing to remember, send it to ill@winnifox.org. That account comes to me, same as mine does. Sometimes that's just easier to remember than going, what was Michelle's last name again? What I need is your request number and the title, and if there's a specific due date you're asking for. And I'll ask for that due date, which is no guarantee that, you know, we're actually going to get it. But most libraries, if it's not outrageously long, if they don't have somebody waiting for it, most libraries are going to be willing to accommodate that. Is there any questions about due dates, renewals? I had thought about, I could put a form on the extranet for you to submit renewal requests if that's something that would be easier for people. If you have other staff that might do it, if that would make it easier for them, that's certainly something we could do. But I tend to think that, you know, if you stick with the ILL email, it's fairly straightforward. It's not too hard to remember. If it is something that, you know, any of you think that would be helpful, let me know and I can look into having them do that. Otherwise, I'm going to move on to returning items via delivery. So I have I'm going to show you some pictures of some samples of routing slips and kind of talk about them a little bit. these are routing slips that return ones that people are including. If they include them, use them, because you know it's getting sent back to where they want it to go. South Central, pretty much most everything coming from South Central. South Central Library System is coming through Madison Public. They do ILL much the way that we do, where they are the clearinghouse. They do all of the lending, so everything they want to filter back through them instead of going to the individual branches, so that they can make sure that it gets checked back in the ILL software, as well as getting checked in the catalog and gets back properly. It's especially important with them and the universities, because they have ILL software and they have their catalog software, and they don't necessarily always speak. So while something might get updated in their search system and get checked in, if it doesn't get updated in the ILL system, overdues will be generated by their ILL system. So you want to make sure that it's getting back to where it needs to get checked in properly, which also brings up the any paperwork that comes with the item. Make sure you return it with the item. Now, the slip that was used to send it to you, the pink slip that was addressed to you, they don't need that back. But any paperwork that was in it, you know, the pink slip in the background that South Central has, you can see that the ALS HPL one is stapled to paperwork that they sent with it. Those items you want to send back, that's going to let them know that this is an ILL item, and they're going to be able to update it and clear their records. So those. Then I want to talk a little bit about some other slips. Now, Minitex is a little bit different, and you'll see a lot of times there's two different slips that Minitex sends. This top one here, it'll set, you see that it's shipped to GZK. GZK is Winifox. It's shipped to us. A lot of times when you see it, this will be crossed out, and you know, your library's name or two-letter code will be written there, because so that we've looked up to see who it's going to, added a due date, and sending it on. This slip on the top is very important to send back. That's what's going to get it checked in from being checked out to us. This other slip is basically, Minitex is a clearinghouse for 3 states. So when we send a request to them, they can send it to any of those libraries in Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota. So they're basically sending a request to that library, which is what this is. So Minitex sent a request to RCL, which is Rockford, I think. And then they filled it, sent it to Minitex, and then Minitex filled the request and sent it to us. So both of these slips need to go back with the item, and they aren't the same thing. The request numbers that are on here are different. You can see there's like there's a number here, there's a number here, there's a number here. So they're all different. So both of them need to get returned with the item. But the nice thing is that all you have to do when you get it, this one that says GZK should be on the outside. The other one should be inside of it. You just put the paperwork in so that this return to MII is sticking out of the top of the book. Put it in the red bins to come to Winifox, and it will get routed. You don't need to worry about filling out a pink slip. You don't need to worry about which library in Minitex it's going to, nothing else. Just put that in there and send it on its way. The other one I have here is just to give an example of what needs to go on the slip. So on here, somebody had written Winifox because it is coming to Winifox. When you return it, you are sending it to Winifox to move on, but that's not its ultimate destination. And anything that goes in your red boxes, A to M, N to Z, is coming to Winifox. So we don't need Winifox written on that slip. We want it routed or filled out for who it's actually going to. So in this case, it's UW Superior. The other thing you want to avoid is not everything. South Central Library System runs our statewide delivery, but not every library is part of South Central Library System. So only those that are members of South Central Library System should have SCLS or South Central written on that route to. And which is again why in most cases, if you use that slip that came with it, it's going to get routed correctly. There is one library in South Central that does their own borrowing and lending, and that is Marshfield. So that is another one where you would write South Central or SCLS on the route to. But other libraries, you're not going to. I know it's confusing because our delivery is South Central and it's a system as well, but that's a case where when you go to the extranet, we have on there, let me go back to the extranet for a second. Whoops. So if we go back here, under delivery, there's the, you can order your delivery. Then there's the delivery libraries under statewide. So you can look up on here. So I have something for Janesville. How do I fill out that slip? If I see here it's Janesville, which is what goes on the second line. The top line is what's in this 2, so Arrowhead. The nice thing too is that if you get something, so Hedberg, let's see, I'm gonna go here. So if somebody gets something and it's just stamped with Ethel Everhard Memorial Library, they don't know who it is. They can go here and it'll tell them C. Westfield Public. So if you get something and the way it's stamped is not the city name, it will tell you on here, it will tell you, what it is. So I don't even know how to say that, is Marshfield Library. So they do a pretty good job of cross-referencing it. The UWs are on here. Pretty much all the UWs, it's just going to be addressed to that UW. UW La Crosse, UW Manitowoc. That's all you need to put on there. But, this is definitely where you want to go if you're not sure whether something's on the library, how to fill out the slip. If you're not sure, you can always, grab me on Teams, send me an email, and I can help you as well. Go back to let's see. Okay. So that's it for delivery. So then I'm going to mention a couple things about returning items via the mail. It's generally a good idea. If you keep the packaging that something came in, you'll have the packaging that you need to mail it back in. Sometimes that doesn't work. I mean, sometimes it gets kind of mangled. But that's also good because some libraries are specific about don't use Jiffy bags, don't, return it in a box. So if you're able to, I find that works really well to have that and just use it to return the item. The other thing I wanted to mention is that USPS offers free tracking. So you don't have to use it, but it's free service and you can kind of see where things are. There are times we've shipped something back where it just ping pongs between 2 different USPS locations, but we can at least see where it is and let the lender know or the borrower know that, okay, it's on its way. It's kind of just caught up in the USPS system. It's not foolproof. It doesn't come, it's not insuring anything. It just kind of lets you know where things are. Whoops, sorry. They come in stacks of 50. It looks like this. There's 2 per sheet. It's a stack of sheets. They're free to order. There's no charge. You can order them right from the USPS site. You just have to create an account on there. with your mailing information and email address, and they will ship them directly to you. The nice thing is you'll see there's this smaller piece on the bottom that's separate, so you can peel that off, put it on your paperwork, and you have what the tracking number is. So you don't have to try to write it down, this long number. And then the top portion with the actual barcode goes on the package. I'll send out the link after because it's a really long link. But I just wanted to mention it because it is something that is a free service that you can use. So it's definitely worth looking into. All right, any questions at this point? Otherwise, I'm going to go and talk a little
Michelle?
bit about, yes.
There's a question in chat.
Oh, I can't, hold on, let me see. There we go, okay. No, somebody's asking if they realized they forgot to return paperwork with something and didn't realize it till weeks after. Is there follow-up I need to do? No, now with, it does bring another point to mind that I wanted to make though. Now with things taking a little bit longer to get back to them, we are trying to catch everything that comes through the delivery on its way to you and on its way back, and actually make note of when we see it go through. So if I see it come through and it doesn't have paperwork, I've actually been printing off a copy and putting it in there, or at least writing what the request number in the ILL software was, so that they have an idea that that's what it is. But it brings me to another thing, which is if you get something returned, like in your book drop, and you're going to return it as a courtesy return, rather than just filling out the pink slip and putting it in the box, if you can write on there courtesy return, or, you know, returned in our book drop, something along those lines, that way when the library on the other end gets it, they're not spending a bunch of time going through all their ILL paperwork and all their other stuff trying to find the paperwork to update it, because a lot of libraries will do that. They want to try to update it and make sure that it's updated in all the different software, but they can end up wasting time for things that aren't really ILL, that, you know, just for some reason got returned to you. So if you're able to, you know, write courtesy return on there, that's gonna help them. So, okay, does anybody else have a question? Now I have chat open so I can actually see that. I apologize for not catching that earlier. All right, I'm going to go back to the extranet. Okay, so the next thing I was going to talk about is unfilled replies. So if down on the ILO page of the extranet, if you go down, there is I have a thing on there about how to decode an unfilled reply. So it has an unfilled reply, and it has, you know, it explains that particular example. All the information you need for decoding it is on the extranet. You'll find where it's going to tell you what the numbers mean and what the letters mean. And I'll say the reason I don't typically write all of it out is because I rarely get questions about it. People just go, oh, it's unfilled, can't get it. You know, so the amount of extra time it takes for me to write it out, as opposed to just use the codes, I could certainly do it if it's something that would help you and you'd use all the time. The thing I can mention, and something that probably add on here is there are a lot of the statuses, and especially the ones that are in this example, 50, 13, 41, 5, those are things that we aren't going to be able to get. 50 is not accessible. 50 I generally use if it's a bookseller, if it's a Libris, if it's Baker and Taylor, they have holdings in there. If it's not a clearinghouse, a consortium where they just do the cataloging, they don't own the items. That's generally what 50 is. So it's not anybody that actually can loan anything. 13 means it's a library that charges. We don't have the ability to pay charges. We cannot have the patron pay the charges. So if they charge, we just can't get it. 41 is they don't lend that format. You'll see that especially if you're requesting DVDs or audiobooks or audio cassettes. Some libraries won't loan their audiovisual. 5, they don't own it. Well, that's pretty self-explanatory. Now, 36 is one that's a little different, and it's one of the few that I'm going to mention that it would be appropriate to re-request at a later date if the patron is still interested. 36 means they're currently not lending. That could be they have staff on vacation, they're in the process of moving, whatever it is. They just right now aren't lending, but in general they do. So we can check back at another time to see. Sometimes if I put 36 and then the code for the library behind it, I'll put till whatever and put whatever date, because they've said in their policy, we're not loaning right now, but we should be back up and running after this date. They don't always. Sometimes they just say we're not loaning right now and we don't know till when. So the other codes, and I'm going to add this to this document in the next week or so, of the times when it would be appropriate. And these are the numbers when you're looking at an unfilled reply that you really want to pay attention to. If it's 1, that means it's in use. So a lot of times if you get an unfilled reply and it's 1 and there's a whole long list of letters after that, it means it was in use at a lot of different libraries. So we're not able to get it right now, which probably means it's fairly popular at the moment. But if you wait a month or so, that popularity may die down and we could try again. 31 is the same thing. That's in constant demand. A lot of times for that, I will look at a couple of the other systems. And if I see that it's in use at that system with 30 holds, 40 holds, it's in constant demand. That's going to be a little bit longer that you're going to want to wait. Because if they have that many holds right now, it's going to take a little bit longer than a month or so before it might become available. 36 I mentioned. The other one right now is 24. 24 is different because it's can't meet deadline date, but currently it was decided that for libraries who don't have the ability to lend all of their collection right now because of COVID, because maybe they have limited staff in the building, maybe they don't have access to everything, that they would use 24. So they just aren't loaning right now or loaning that particular type of item right now due to COVID restrictions. So that's a hard one because we don't know how long they may or may not, it may be till they can lend again, but it is something that it's possible that at a later date we could request. Somebody's asking if an item has a lot of holds, do you ever recommend purchasing the item? I do a lot of times, but a lot of those tend to be newer items anyway. And you know, a lot of times it's just outside of that, say, 4-month window and you're requesting it, or it could just be a thing that is suddenly popular for whatever reason, because it was on a TV show, it was mentioned wherever. I don't generally send it back and say, you might want to consider purchasing this, but I think that's something that definitely you can look at. If you see that there's a long list of in uses and the 31, which is in constant demand, it's definitely worth, looking at and going, is this something maybe that it would be worth us having? That being said, there are things that are out of print that also end up like that. I've been trying to get a Nora Roberts book that, for whatever reason, there are very few libraries that own. And it's one that she doesn't seem to be republishing. So there's very few libraries. It's always in use. But if you want to purchase it, I think I looked at Amazon and it was like $300 for a paperback. It's probably not worth it. One other one where there is a possibility of re-requesting is if you get a non-circ reply, which is a 4, or a 42, which is genealogical. That's not going to circulate. I'm going to send it back to you with that, but I'm also going to say, is there something we could request copies of? Because we may be able to get, a copy of the index so that they can look at the index and see, okay, is this patron's name in there? And then could go back and request copies of specific things. We aren't going to be able to get copies of entire things, but, we can usually get a good chunk. I think State Historical does up to 50 pages, if I remember correctly. So that, that's a possibility if you provide additional information. And there are a couple of libraries that you may see that reply. There's one in particular right now, which is BRL, which is Boston. They will only loan things for in-library use. So right now, because for the most part, patrons can't come in to use things, those will come back with a 4 non-circ reply because they aren't circulating outside. So those are the ones that I think you want to look out for. So it's the 1 in use or 31 in constant demand, the 36 or 24, which is basically they're inaccessible currently. Those are all things that can potentially be re-requested at a later time. The other one that obviously can is if you get a reply of 30, which is too new. And generally with that, I will put in the reply, this is too new, books must be at least 4 months old, and I'll usually try to include the publication date so that you have that and you can look at it and go, okay, I need to wait until after this date to request it. That being said, just because it's gotten past that threshold doesn't mean that it's not going to still be popular. So it could come back unfilled at that point, but we'll at least try. Does anybody have any questions at this point? All right. I think oops. So you'll see on the decoding I just showed you the numeric codes. This is what the numbers mean. It shows you the number and tells you what it is. And then if you want to know what the 3-letter codes, and it says 3-letter codes, but there are some that are up to 5-letter codes. But you can type in the code. Oh, wrong one. You need to do it in the symbol, not the. I don't know why that didn't work. Oh, wait. Okay, so then you'll see BTCTA is a vendor. It's Baker and Taylor. So GZK is Winnifox. And apparently DEGZK is somebody in Germany. So yeah, you can see if you care and want to know, which libraries gave which particular reply, you can see that by putting in those codes that are on there. So is there anything that I didn't talk about that people have questions about? I tried to cover all the things that people had sent in questions about, but it's entirely possible I missed something. So if somebody has questions, I also wanted to leave time because I know people have asked, how do you handle items once you get them in at your library? And I can mention, give you some ideas, some best practices, but that's not a part that I do because the items go to you and you're the one that's checking them out to your library. I will say, I think it's important that you keep some kind of paperwork. That's going to help you, one, because you need to know who to check it out, who it's for when it comes in. But also then when you get it in, you can, on the paperwork, you're going to want to write who it came from, what the due date is that it's due there, and what due date you gave your patron. You'll want to include what barcode number you assigned it, because when you're checking those items out in the CERC system, it's just going to say ILL item on their card. So if they have a question as to what ILL item it is, you need to know what that barcode is corresponding with. So if you have that on your paperwork, that's going to be helpful. It's also a good idea if you get an item and there's any kind of damage or anything, if there's multiple parts, note that on your copy of the paperwork. So you know that when the patron brings it back, there's also, there's supposed to be a disc in the back pocket of this book, or there's supposed to be, it's a DVD with a separate, book that came with it. And then, generally you're going to want to keep those. Then when the item comes back to you, you're going to want to note on there when you sent it back to the library, make sure the card that's with it matches up, discharge the card. You'll want to note on there when you're sending it back and how you're sending it, whether it's delivery or mail. If you do mail it and you decide to do tracking, you can put that on there. That way, if you get an overdue notice, you can, and it gets sent to you and, okay, oh, I sent that back on such and such a date. And yeah, it's probably not back yet, but if it was sent back quite a while ago, then we know we need to do, put some search out on it to try to find it. I recommend holding on to that paperwork. Don't get rid of it right away because sometimes things take a while to get back. Sometimes it takes a while before overdue notices or bills are sent out. So you want to make sure that you have, that information down the line as to when it was and where it came from. Okay, question. How do we know our login information? For the extranet? Is that what we're asking? For the extranet, that is something I think Pete helps you set up to be able to log into the extranet. You use your your normal username and password, but I believe Pete has to, the first time you do it, they have to set something up on their end. So I would contact Pete about that. I'll double check and make sure that that's what you need to do and send it up in the follow-up. The list of ILLs you've requested for the year, that is something that you should have. I do have all of your ILL requests. I keep everything in folders by library. And by folders, I mean email folders. I don't have paper copies of anything. So if you have a question, I can look them up that way. But otherwise, yeah, for your list of ILLs you've requested, that's something that you would keep. And that's, again, why you'd want to either keep it as a paper copy. You don't have to ever print it out and do it as a paper copy. You can use the emails, put them in a separate folder for ILLs and have all of them there. Like I said, that's what I do, and I can show you. Let me see. So you'll see, I don't have anything there. We'll do Oshkosh. So you'll see, like I have, this is Oshkosh's, I have, or Nina, all of their requests are in here. They're in the order that they come in. I have them sorted by date. So you can see I've got all of their requests there. So I can easily find them, but I can also search within email. And that's one thing I will say is that I know there's a general search, but you can add advanced search. And I highly recommend that. And I don't know if you can you see the advanced search box on my screen? I don't know, nobody's replying. But in the advanced search, you know, you're able to search. I can, instead of just searching Nina's, I can search my whole folder, the subfolders, subject field, and message body. So I can find information anywhere in that request, not just what's in the subject, which makes it much easier if you misfile an ILL request or you forget to move it to a folder or whatever. If you're using email, it makes it much easier because I'm searching through, you know, stuff for all 29, you know, all the libraries, all of their requests, and some of them going back, and I have the previous year's requests because some of those haven't really fully been completed yet. So I can find things much more easy doing that. All right, let's see. So we don't send the paperwork that comes with items. No, the paperwork that comes with the item, I recommend not sending it with the item when you give it to the patron, but you do want to send it back to the lender when you're sending it back. So you're keeping some kind of paper. By paperwork, it doesn't have to be a printed paper. It can be an email copy. You can edit the email message, keep all the information in there. You can print it off, do it in a paper file. It kind of depends on how you do your ILL, whether you have, a single person doing it and you have a dedicated ILL email account where you can kind of keep everything together. Or you have multiple people doing it where having a paper file might make more sense because then multiple people can access it. One of the other things that I know some of the libraries do is as they create requests, they input them into an Excel spreadsheet. And that way it's something that everybody can access and see what's been requested, what was filled, what wasn't filled. Yeah, so somebody mentioned that they keep a binder with a copy of the emails when the request is received. Others I know have like a paper box that they keep it in. But this is kind of where I was hoping, you know, you guys could jump in and you know, help each other, much like when the request was sent out of like, how do you wrangle all your routing flags? And people were great and sent pictures and of things I would have never thought of that seemed to be a much tidier solution. But so does anybody have any input or any questions? So I'm not seeing any more questions in the chat, and I don't know if, I mean, I think you guys can unmute yourself to talk, right? Nobody has talked in a while. I don't think I inadvertently muted everybody.
I don't think we have any questions. here.
Okay, good.
We learned some things. Thank you.
You're welcome. I will send out a follow-up email with a little bit of the information, and like I said, I'm going to update the one document on the extranet to kind of give you those basics of what things have the potential to be re-requested. Gonna check over my notes, see if there's anything I forgot. If you do use email for ILL and you're not familiar with how to set up or use advanced find, you can always shoot me a message and I can show you how to do that. I could do a one-on-one thing in Teams and show you how to find the advanced find and how to search within there. It's a lifesaver because I would never be able to find things when you guys are asking, you know, for, oh, I have a patron that requested something back in, you know, December and is wondering about it. And if I had to just, you know, scroll through everything, I would never be able to find anything. So
I'm going to just say that we use a combination of both the paper as well as the computer files. And Michelle set us up with the computer files. That's a lifesaver as far as after a book has been returned, we can just move that information into a dead file that's listed according to month. We have a file for the unfilled. It works out so well so that you can just go right to that without having to dig through all the paper copies as well. So if you want some help setting that up, Michelle was great as far as setting it up for us in our library system.
okay, I'm gonna see if I can. So if I stop sharing my screen, does that mean that you can see me now? Okay.
Mhm.
There was a question about attaching return item labels. So that was one of the things I wanted to mention. So I don't know if you guys can see this. This is one of those slips. Where am I? I can't tell. Where's my? This is one of those slips from Indian Head. When they send it to you, it's a long slip. When they send it to you, it has your information up here to be flipped over to send back. With those, generally, if you put things towards the middle of a book and you rubber band it, it's going to stay in place. The one thing I want to mention about these, where you can fold them in half, is if they're folded exactly in half, the information that it was going to you shows up on one side, and then where you're wanting to return it to shows up on the other. Which these go through several hands for sorting. I have seen them turn around and come back. So if you fold it a little bit further down so that when you put it in, that's not going to show, that saves things making a loop-de-loop. For things like this, you know, book on CD, a lot of times you can just slide it in under the cover, which helps because it'll actually close then. They don't close tight if you try to stick it in and then close it on top of it. In general, you should not be using removable tape on books. So if you need to put something in a book and you don't feel like it's going to hold in place, a lot of times what I'll do, this is the paperwork. I'll use the removable tape just to tape the routing flag to the paperwork, which I then can put in the center of the item, and that'll hold it a little better, and then rubber band it. Okay, I lost my train of thought. One thing I will say, especially with South Central, they have those small little pink slips that have their information on them. If you just shove it in the middle of the book and that's not where the flag is, it's not always easy to find unless you like are really flipping through the book. So I do recommend that with those, you know, take that paperwork, tape the pink slip to it. That way, when they go to pull out the pink routing flag, their paperwork is coming out with it and they're not having to sit and look through the book to try to find it. Looks like not seeing anything else in the chat. If you guys do think of other questions, if you have something specific that you want to ask, you can contact me at any time. I do work a combination of in the office, at home. I am in the office most days, but usually at least one day a week I'm at home. So either email me or contact me via Teams. You can call me via Teams, and I actually can pick up and talk to you on my phone if you call me via Teams, if you don't need to do a video call. So that works if you're trying to get a hold of me and you'd prefer to talk. You can try calling me in the office, but like I said, I'm not always there. So if you don't reach me that way, one of the other options is probably the way to go. And if there's nothing else, I think we actually took up almost all the time. I'm surprised. But thank you all for being patient and listening and participating, and I hope it was worth your time.
Okay, thank you.